Welcome to the Think Tank. I got my new friend Doug Sanders on, founder and president of Sanders Sports and Entertainment.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
Let's talk a little bit about, some of your current clients. Who are you working with today?
Yeah, I have Chad Ochocinco, DeAndre Hopkins, Bobby Wagner, Godwin down there with the Tampa Bay Bucks, a number of others.
Were you working with Chad during his name change from Chad Johnson to Ochocinco? I'm curious.
The funny thing about that is everyone asks, still to this day, is he Ocho? Is he Johnson? What is it? But you can use either one.
The Tyson Paul fight coming up. What do you think is going to happen there?
Being a fan of boxing, I would hate to see Tyson go out on like a bad note. I would like to see him, Paul get hit a couple times by Tyson.
In the article, they showed Tyreek's time, his last 100 meter, which I think was in college, but it wasn't really that far off his Noah's winning time. So
that guy Cheetah is fast as hell, but I think there's a chance he'd give him a bit of a hard time, Noah.
Hey, welcome to the Think Tank. I got my new friend Doug Sanders on, founder and president of Sanders Sports and Entertainment. I just met Doug, I guess about 2 weeks ago, Doug, at a Brand Innovators event in Dallas. But definitely bonded and excited to spend some time with you at the end of the month here up in LA at some more Brand Innovators events. But welcome to the show.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me and fast friends. It was really good connected down there in Dallas, and I'm glad we can continue to build our friendship and, figure out how we can make some magic together.
Absolutely, man. Well, I appreciate you coming and joining and seeing what we do at Brand Innovators. But let's talk about you a little bit. So you've been in the sports industry for a while now. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey and, from the start to founding your own business and what you're up to today?
Absolutely. Yeah, man. I feel like one of the older guys nowadays, but I guess I'll take it back. I'm originally from Maryland. Moved around a lot when I was younger. We were in Seattle, North Carolina, Guam for a little bit. That left me with just not knowing where I wanted to go to school. I ended up going to University of Arizona, and that was probably the best decision I ever made. Bear down, shout out to the Wildcats. But at Arizona, I was lucky enough to meet a bunch of awesome people. Some of those happened to go to the NBA, NFL, and I got exposure and the opportunity to be around these professional athletes while still being in school, and that just opened up my eyes to the world of professional sports and wanted to figure out a way to break into that. And I did a ton of research at that point in college, and I'm like, how do I figure this thing out? And I got a bit lucky in the sense that I had some connections to the sports industry through family. And I lucked out and landed a job right out of college at a boutique firm called the Sports Link, working with primarily NFL players. At the time, we had Reggie Bush, Marcus Allen, Shannon Sharp, TJ Houshmandzadeh was over there, a number of other guys, and that really introduced me to the world of sports marketing. Unfortunately, this gentleman just passed, but I worked for a little bit for Mike Ornstein, who is well regarded in the industry as one of the leaders in sports marketing. Worked at the league, NFL, worked for a number of players. So I cut my teeth there. I went to CAA. I wanted to be at the big shop. Again, I like to say got lucky, but a bit of hard work and relationships helps. So was at CAA for a very short stint, but I learned a lot while being there. I also learned that I liked the boutique firm more. Went back the boutique route, was working with a number of players on the NFL, NBA. We started to expand into other sports, boxing. It just opened my eyes to what I like to call the athlete brand individually. And I decided to go entertainment. I went to a boutique shop called the Chamber Group, which primarily focused on PR. Chris Chambers, such a brilliant publicist, worked with everyone from Mariah Carey, Usher, a number of people. And I was working in their sports division there. At that point, I decided I wanted to just go completely sport and sport driven. But I learned a lot throughout the years at all these different stops, and I realized I could package this thing up and do it the exact way I wanted to. And that was focusing on brand first. And that was the impetus to starting my own firm, Sanders Sports and Entertainment, in 2015, where I was like, let's focus on building the brand. And as we establish and build an organic, authentic brand around the athlete, we should be able to create this legacy brand that goes far beyond their playing days. And I took a bit of that from the entertainment mindset and model of, whether it be Lil Wayne, Two Chains, or Jay Z, or the likes of anyone else, right? Their music lasts a lifetime. We all have that nostalgia feeling of what somebody played like, or what it was like if somebody scored that winning touchdown, but like that brand carries on throughout. And there's an ability to sell against that from a marketing perspective. And I wanted to help those guys establish that. And so far, we've been pretty good at it. We've had some success with the clients that we have, and always looking to continue to grow and build with the right guys. So that's where
Well,
I'm
I
at
love the
now.
journey, and by the way, congratulations. I guess you're coming up on a decade, right, of your own
Man,
firm.
it's
So
wild.
that I
Yeah.
bet time flies. Huh?
Completely. I was talking to my wife about that the other day. I was like, 9 years? It literally felt like yesterday. Granted, I have a couple kids now, so that also feels just as crazy. But again, blessed and thankful to work with the amazing clients that we have that trust me in helping them build this.
So, as a side note, how is the surf in Guam? I've never been out to Guam. I'm curious. What did you do any
I'll be
surfing
honest,
out
I
there
was
when you were
there when
growing
I
up?
was a baby. So I was there from when I was like 1 to 5. But
Okay. Well,
wildly,
you could
and
have
my
gotten on
wife
the
would.
longboard, you know.
Yeah, right. But funny enough, my wife is actually from Guam. I ended up marrying a Chamorro woman, as they're called, and we're planning to go back and take the kids. So maybe I'll jump on a board.
Ah, very cool. Well, yeah, it was funny. In the the early 2000s. I'm always representing the Longhorns here. We had
Hmm.
our I guess co-defensive coordinator and DB coach was Dwayne Aquina, and I know he's
Yeah,
over there at Arizona now, helping build up. And making they had an amazing defense last year. We thought we were going to steal him back this year, and then I think they made him an offer he
I
can't
would have been
refuse. So
upset. I
congratulations
needed
on
that.
keeping that guy.
Listen, we need that over there. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm glad we could
Yeah.
keep them.
Well, I love. We talked about it in Dallas, and clearly what we do with Brand Innovators is all about brands and building out that long term profile with athletes like what you've done. I mean, we're just getting started on the sports side, but really love the way you go about it. I'm curious. Clearly I'm a big college guy, and we're focusing on what's happening a lot in college as well. Do you, as an agent, do you look at the college athletes? Are you watching what's happening there? Are you representing any of them? Do you think about getting in that early stage with them?
Absolutely. I mean, that space, one, has been needed for a long time, right? I think just the NIL space itself and these athletes helping to build these institutions off of essentially their hard work in sport, it's helpful. You look at a guy like me, the reason I wanted to go to Arizona was because of sport. That helps the institution. And those players that come from there have such legacy, as I like to say, whether it's Miles Simon, Steve Kerr, Gilbert Arenas, Andre Iguodala, whatever the case may be out there at Arizona, that's one of the reasons I'm down there. And they should be able to be compensated for that, and be a part of that institution for a long time. So I like the shift. I think, if I'm being completely honest and transparent, I think there needs to be some guardrails on it and better guardrails. I think, you're giving these young kids an opportunity to make an income, and they need to be schooled on what that is and the relationships that they should be getting in bed with and how they should go about it. And then, even a step further, is making sure they have the right team in place as it relates to accounting. Do these guys understand what it's like to be a 1099 employee, right? Those things matter. Um, those things are important, and there's guardrails that should be there. I can go on about that forever. I love it, and I think there's a lot of opportunity for the brands, and there's a lot of opportunities for the clients. And I have done work in the space. I just don't currently work with a player, male or female, in the space right now. But I think there's a lot of opportunities on both sides. And I think it's good for the brands, especially the smaller brands wanting to activate around those colleges, right? Tucson's a small town. We don't have pro sports down there, but that is our pro sports, right? And there's enough brands and corporations down there that want to activate around there and get visibility, and they can utilize that talent for it. So
Yeah,
that's
it's
that's
interesting
my
that you
general
mentioned.
thoughts.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of what we talked about earlier. You got to surround yourself with great people. One
Yeah.
of the things I've seen just being around these college kids, even just over the last year, is a lot of the people that are representing them, and I won't call anybody out specifically, but they seem to be like college kids themselves. And so you
Yeah.
think, what are they really doing? Are they just jumping on the bandwagon? Are they signing with the right people? I mean, what's really happening there? And there's a fiduciary responsibility issue. There's a regulation issue. There's a long-term branding issue, right? Making
Hmm.
sure you're being authentic to yourself. I mean, there's just so many factors that I think come into play. And then on top of that, I mean, I could probably go on and on. I'm sure we all could about, the rules and regulations around the transfer portal. I mean, my
Yep.
perspective is that that's turned into, free agency really, and that there should be some sort of standards or rules around that transfer portal. Somebody
You know what it
somebody
really
shouldn't be
reminds me
changing
of?
schools 4 times in 4 years.
It reminds me of essentially international soccer, in which these players are getting sold off, right? And maybe the institution isn't receiving compensation, right? But you're essentially just selling them off for whatever reason the other team's able to buy them. It's wild. It's wild to me.
Yeah,
And I was listening to, gosh darn it, I forgot what player it was. But essentially, he was saying that maybe it was down at Brand Innovators, maybe it was Gronkowski's brother. But essentially, what he was saying is it doesn't allow that player to go through hard times and want to build and like be able to fight through to be that number one player that maybe they didn't come in as, right? So are you creating the right opportunity for that player successfully long term as a player? And that's the number one thing, right? Like, and I say that even to my current athletes, right? We have to make the main thing the main thing. And that's you as a dog on the field or a beast on the court, whatever you are, make the main thing the main thing, and we'll continue to grow and build everything else from it. And that's all about building that brand. And that's what concerns me about the transfer portal, because is it a little bit of hardship? Is it money? What is it? And are you truly helping yourself long term and the end result of making it to whatever league you're trying to get to? That's scary.
yeah, for sure. That was Chris Gronkowski for sure. Yeah, he's
It
the one who
was,
brought
right?
that up. It was a
Yeah.
panel with Michael Irving and Rory and everybody. Yeah, it was a great panel. Honestly, I mean that's actually I think a problem with an entire generation across all industry, right? It's like,
Yeah.
well, I don't want to work here, so I'm just going to change jobs quick, right? And
Yeah.
and I'm not getting enough equity here, so it's my God-given right for equity in your company. If you don't give it to me, I'm going somewhere else. There's just that whole hard work mentality. Not saying that that there aren't some people that have it, but it just seems like there's a whole generation that might be missing on a little bit. And I've always been a big believer that as human beings, we only really learn through adversity. You can read
Hmm.
stuff in a textbook, but you got to go through it, right? You got to go through those hard times, and that's what really builds your character and strengthens your resolve. As
Hmm.
humans. So, totally agree with that statement. Well, jumping back into the professional side, let's talk a little bit about some of your current clients. Who are you working with today?
Yeah, I have Chad Ochocinco, DeAndre Hopkins, Bobby Wagner, Chris Godwin down there with the Tampa Bay Bucks, Isaiah Simmons with the Giants, Charles Cross up in Seattle, Nick Young, Swaggy P, Channing Frye, a number of others. We're constantly adding to the roster of the right talent. I think it's all about having the guys that understand it and want to build and build these right things. Because for me, I'm not necessarily your traditional agent. I'm a marketing agent, right? Registered marketing agent. from a league perspective, and I go out there and I help the guys build their brands fully, right? So I have to have the guys that understand it. They want to get off the couch. They want to grow. They want to explore different opportunities, whether it be in fashion, whether it be in the community and giving back, whether it be DeAndre Hopkins with creating a flag football league with the NFL. There's so many opportunities out there, but you have to be committed to building that.
So I'm curious, let's talk about, you got two different sides of the spectrum, right? You got DeAndre Hopkins, he's a, active superstar, and you got Chad Ochocinco, one of the greatest players, of all time, really.
Hmm.
How do you go about building their brands differently? Um, one
Yeah.
that's not active anymore versus an active player.
I think it goes back to, again, and I say it, and it's somewhat buzzwords, but it goes back to the authenticity of it all, right? Who is that person? Chad Ochocinco, everyone knows as this vibrant personality. He was who he was on the field, celebrations, but when Chad was playing, that wasn't allowed, right? He was fined left and right, but he embraced it, and he was always himself. And I think if you look at Chad, going on throughout the years, he was always himself, even beyond his playing days. The amazing thing is that's embraced now, and we've been able to lean in on who he is, right? And create opportunities around that. I mean, Chad was probably one of the first guys that was on social actively, actively. And he has a massive social following across the board. I think he has, over 3 million on X and, 1.9 on Instagram. What that holds is a fan base in which they're engaged in what Chad has to say. And that's beneficial and helpful for these brands if it is real and authentic for that brand to align with his brand, right? One of those examples is EA. We've been longtime partners with EA across a number of their titles, right? And we've created a show with them. He's gone out and he's gone to games and interacts with the active players as the Madden's ratings adjuster. That's authentic. That's real. Chad engages with all of these guys. Chad was out here playing FIFA and getting a Uber or getting picked up by a kid in Connecticut, right? Just to play him at his house and would order pizza. To me, that was the craziest shit ever, pardon my French, but that's authentically who he is. He's a man of the people, and you get a company that's excited about that and wants to lean in on that. And thankfully, they've been partners for us for 5+ years now. Um, DeAndre is a little bit different, and it's always a little bit different when they're active, right? DeAndre is not as loud, boisterous. That's not his personality, but his authentic self shines through in his creativity, his fashion, his care to give back to the community. Obviously, we know the story about him and his mother, and domestic violence and what he's had to endure and what she's had to endure. All that plays into who he is as his individual brand. And there's a number of companies that have aligned with us over the years. Verizon is one that's been a longtime partner of DeAndre's, right? Because they lean in on who he is. So it's a matter of really looking at the guy, and I say, okay, you are a ball player, but what else are you? What else do you want to be known for, right? How can we build around that? And if you build that authentically, people lean in on that. They love that.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that lately. I mean, it seems like, people are really, I mean, everybody can watch the Sports Center highlights, right? We can see the,
Hmm.
5 catches for 110 yards and 2 touchdowns. What people are interested in is what are they doing off the field? How are they like me, right?
Yep.
Are they drinking beer and shooting pool and hanging out with their friends, or are they taking their kids to the baseball game and coaching little league? What do they do that's similar to us? Because we're all looking to relate to somebody. It's always nice to relate to individuals that you look up to. So it sounds like that's a big component to your guidance when you're working with these players. Do you help them navigate? You mentioned social media earlier. Do you help them kind of navigate that social media process and support those efforts?
Yeah, it's really important. Social is important. It's I like to say it's a gift and a curse, right? It's important because you want to be present and visible, but it's also you have to be careful with it because you literally could create such problems for yourself by engaging in a crazy conversation with a troll, or it may be a fake account, right, trying to get you to say some stuff. And the other problem is everyone has access to you, but they're hidden behind a keyboard. So they may say something on the keyboard that they may not say to you in person, whether it's a fantasy football, you mess that up, or you messed up their betting, or whatever the case may be. It's really, really important to engage with your audience, grow your audience, and be, real to that audience and want them to be a part of your world. But it's also important that you're careful of how you're presenting that, how you're, sending that message out. Sometimes guys are, you know, a little bit open or too open with engaging with fans, and that can get you in trouble as well. So you just have to be careful, but it's really, really important to use and grow.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, curious. So, were you working with Chad during his name change from Chad Johnson to Ochocinco? I'm
I
curious.
was not. No, I didn't get, unfortunately, I didn't get part of that. He was already Ocho and like changed back. The funny thing about that is everyone asks still to this day, is he Ocho? Is he Johnson? What is it? But you can use either one. He's comfortable with either one.
Yeah, that's. I remember when he did that. That was definitely a big move, but it stuck. People rarely use
Yeah,
Johnson, these days. So I
that's for
remember too.
sure.
I think he was on a junior college team with Steve Smith. I always think about, man, that
He
must have been
was
a
Santa Monica.
pretty strong team.
It's wild, right? To think about how strong they were, and to go from that JUCO to making it both of them in the league.
Yeah, for sure. So, when you think about your clientele, it sounds like the majority of your clientele is it NFL and NBA, or what about the other leagues? I
Yeah.
mean, what are the other? Are there other sports you're interested in getting involved in?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think an athlete is an athlete, right? Male, female, whatever league or sport they play. I have been lucky enough throughout the years to work with a number of athletes and entertainers across the board, right? Boxers, Olympians. So I'm not necessarily only looking at NFL or NBA players. It just so happens that that's been, as of late, who we've most represented. I think it's just a matter, I said this earlier, but I think it's a matter of looking at those folks that want to build a brand and want to build something special long term. And when I talk about brand, I want it to be clear that it's not always about just being loud and being visible on social. There's different ways that you can represent yourself and establish that brand long term. One of the other guys that I have so much respect for is Bobby Wagner, right? Bobby is one of the most brilliant minds, and I'm lucky to work with him. I tell this story, it actually just came out on Sportico, but Bobby, this was last summer, decided that he wanted to shadow Roger Goodell, right? Nobody, no player has ever shadowed Roger Goodell. And Bobby represents himself. He's represented over 100 million worth of his own contracts. He's clearly a businessman. To me, he was like, I want to go shadow Roger Goodell because I want to understand the business of the NFL. Who better to ask about the business of the NFL than Roger Goodell? And to me, I'm like, dude, that's so brilliant, right? Like anyone's going to do that, want to be smarter in business, but that's Bobby's brand. That's how he's established himself long term, and he creates opportunities for himself because of that. And those opportunities extend for him individually, but also we've done partnerships with Microsoft Surface, and they see the value in his brand and who he is, not only as a ball player, but as a businessman, right? So I try to inform these folks athletes when they want to go out and do this and looking at it, it's important to start early and it's important to build something authentic and real, right? But it doesn't matter what sport you're playing, you can do that. You have a voice, you have the opportunity because of social media, and you're in front of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about, these athletes that are in the Olympics, right? We just finished the Olympics, and usually
Hmm.
this is their moment of glory, right? This is where they're on all the talk shows and they come home with the gold medals and all of that stuff. And I actually watched, it's actually a pretty good documentary, that sprint documentary on Netflix, and I kind of wanted to watch it
Yeah.
so that when I was watching the races, I knew who some of the other players were, and clearly, I mean, I guess it was pretty amazing that Noah Lyles didn't get the double, but he still got a bronze when he had COVID and 102, 103-degree fever.
It's
But then I
wild.
saw I saw I think it was
Yeah.
yesterday or the day before that Tyreek Hill was like, "Oh, I'll beat you," So I was thinking, well, there's a deal right there. We need to watch them run their 100 together, right? And see who wins.
Hmm.
That would be a race I would tune into. Tyreek Hill versus Noah
You know
Lyles.
what's funny? I think over the years, I've seen a number of people try to get into the space of setting up races and all that. So it'll be interesting now with the success of this Olympics and the next one coming to LA, if there is an opportunity to create something like that crossover, right? The crossover races, because guys talk about that all the time.
Yeah, well, we know Noah's trying to
And I would,
transform the sport, right? That's what he's claiming out there.
yeah.
So maybe that's a way to do it. It was interesting. They showed in the article they showed Tyreek's time, his last timed 100 meter, which I think was in college, but it wasn't. It wasn't really that far off Noah's winning time. So that'd be something I'd tune into for sure.
Listen, that guy Cheetah is fast as hell. I don't know. I think he would need some true proper training again, right? Because it's been a really long time since he's lined up like that to really race. But I think there's a chance he'd give him a bit of a hard time. Noah, I don't know if he'd win, but he'd give him a little bit of a hard time, I think.
Yeah, it's all about the start, right? You
I'd
got to get
watch
out of
it.
the starting blocks. You got to get out of the starting blocks. So,
Yeah.
well,
Although
speaking
Noah
of,
kind of chases people down.
yeah, yeah, no, for sure. He definitely that last 40 yards or so, man. He looks like he's behind, and
Man.
he's a talented athlete for sure. It's pretty wild. Speaking
I
of
think it was the
spectacles, we've got the
BBC, but they did.
what's that?
I was gonna say, I think it was the BBC, but they did like a breakdown of the 10 yards of it all, and or meters, excuse me, 10 meters of it all, and like he was in last place coming out of the blocks up until the first 40 meters, if I'm not mistaken, and then slowly, Noah, I'm talking about, just crept on everyone and won in that 100, which is wild.
Yeah, I saw that breakdown too. That was pretty amazing. Well, anyway, speaking of spectacles, I guess we in the fall we've got the Tyson Paul fight coming up. What do you think's going to happen there?
Hmm. Man, being a fan of boxing, I would hate to see Tyson go out on like a bad note. And a bad note meaning maybe Paul got the best of him, right? So it's a little bit for me like I'm okay with the elevation and visibility around it and taking in the audience of the Pauls, which is great because then it brings in new fans, hopefully, of the whole sport. But it's also like, daggone, that's one of the greats. Does he have to be in that? What's that going to look like? And I mean, hopefully it's fun. We know it's entertaining, right? They've done such an incredible job. But I would like to see him, Paul, get hit a couple times by Tyson.
Oh, me too, man. It'll be devastating to me a little bit, man. I remember playing Mike Tyson Punch Out when we were growing up, man. That was
Oh,
the
heck
that
yeah.
was the game. My thumbs would be hurting, at the end
Yeah.
of the game. Trying to get past all those guys. So, well, tell me what is there anything new on the horizon for your business? Anything you're super focused on going into your decade here, your 10th year?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just honestly focused on wanting to help these young kids and grow in the right way, right? We talk about the new opportunities with NIL and how it's coming to them quicker and quicker. What's fascinating is I started in this in '07, right? And when I started, it was literally just about the shield, shield, shield. Or you had the other mindset of shut up and dribble, just play the game. Now these athletes have an opportunity to not only be some of the most recognizable brands individually and athletes individually throughout the world, but they have the ability to create something from that and create a lasting impact. And I want to be a part of that. I want to help them and start early. So I think about that a lot. And I think about, I don't do it just from a financial stake. Every one of my players has a charitable component and a give back component, whether it's, Bobby Wagner, where we created a comic book around stroke awareness because unfortunately he lost his mother to stroke, right? These things are important. You have a platform, you're there, reach back, help somebody, and use that platform the right way, not just to, fill your pockets, right? But what can we do to help others? Obviously, I mentioned DeAndre and domestic violence. There's Chris Godwin that I have that's pet adoption and also giving pets to disabled veterans, right, as service type animals. I think that's so important for them, for these young athletes, excuse me, to think about where you are, how you can use your NIL to not only, make some money, but actually make an impact and do something good because you do have the platform and you have the ability to do it.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So, say all that to say, I hope to work with a bunch of amazing young people and help as many people as I can.
I
That's my
love it,
goal.
man. I love it. I totally agree. I think social enterprise, certainly when you have a platform, is super important. It's really important for all businesses, I think. And when you're building you're building your own brand, you are a business, and I think that's important. And it's
Hmm.
important to be authentic around that as well. So, well, you got any bold predictions for the upcoming football season or anything else you want to share with the audience
Ooh,
here? Go out on a limb.
bold predictions. Let me see here. I honestly think the Houston Texans are about to make a crazy run. I don't know if that's bold because CJ was such a beast last year, but look out for them. Um, and then I think we're going to be surprised by some of the new young talent as well that's come in. Um, and then hopefully, obviously, I have Bobby Wagner over there, but like we see the Commanders turn that organization around as well. I don't know if those are so bold, but that's sort of my hot takes around the NFL for this year thus far.
Yeah, that's I like it. I think those are good. I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan, which is painful. It's been a
Oh,
long
my bad.
time. It's been a long time.
You guys gonna pay that guy or what?
What's that?
I said, you guys gonna pay that kid CD or what?
I don't know. I hope so. I hope so. I mean, he's an Oklahoma Sooner too, man. So he was an arch nemesis in college. But what I love seeing, honestly, when you think about, we talked earlier about, these guys that not transferring out. It was awesome to see Jordan Whittington from Texas show out for the Rams at the preseason games.
Yeah.
This is a kid that was a five-star
Yep.
coming out, dealt with a lot of injury, was a huge leader on the team. In fact, he was the one that made the catch against Washington last year that set up the opportunity to potentially win that game in the playoffs. And he just was a leader
Hmm.
on the team, ends up getting drafted in the sixth round, and looks like he's going to be a major contributor for that team. So perfect example of not transferring out, doing what you need to do, becoming a
Hmm.
leader on the team, get drafted, and do it the right way. So it was really cool to see him show out on I guess Sunday against the Cowboys, by the way, of course. And I hope he has a great year. So I'm going to predict that guy's going to have a great year, and I'm excited
There we go.
to watch it. Excited to watch it. Well, hey
I'm
man,
rooting for
I'm
him.
excited to see you in hopefully in a couple weeks here at the end of August, and we're doing our event at the NFL headquarters there on the 29th of August, and Taco Bell on the 27th. So be staying down in South Bay and looking forward to spend a little bit of time together, brother.
I'll come hang with you guys. I would love that.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks for joining.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Speak soon.